Hey guys, it's Ron, and today we're going to take a closer look at this Max M100 Mini ITX case by Geeek. So let's get started. For case specifics, first we'll start off with the dimensions. It's 272 millimeters long, 196 millimeters wide, and 320 millimeters tall. For colors, it comes in either a white-black combo or a white-transparent combo. It is all acrylic construction. It can accommodate 2 3.5 inch or 2.5 inch drives. For cooling, it has a place at the top for 120 millimeter fan, and then also at the rear there's a spot for 120 millimeter fan. For the front I/O, we have USB 3.0, USB 2.0, HD audio, and a mic jack. It does take standard ATX power supplies. It has 2 expansion slots, and then for your graphics card length, it has to be no longer than 255 millimeters, and then the CPU cooler has to be no taller than 160 millimeters. Alright, first let's start off by talking about packaging. So this is a full acrylic case. It came in a pretty small box, not anything that you'd be shipping this PC once it's built in, but it comes nicely packaged with all the acrylic sheets together. They're protected on both sides with some protective film. Along with that, there is also the instructions and a nice hardware container, a nice hardware case. Now we'll go ahead and move on to assembly. Assembly here isn't too difficult in this case. It took me a little bit of time to begin with because of the Taiwanese instructions. There is English instructions on a blog portion of their Geek website, so I definitely take a hop over there and look at that. It'll tell you what screws need to go where, but after that it actually comes together pretty well. Now that we've assembled the case, we're going to go ahead and take a more in-depth look at the case. Starting out with the front, we have our power and reset button along with LEDs. And then you've got just this nice plain sheet of white acrylic. And then here at the bottom we have our USB 2.0, headphone, microphone jack, and USB 3.0. Moving on to the bottom of the case, as you can see there are 4 nice standard case feet, and they do have foam on the bottom to go ahead and protect any surface that you put this case on. And then we also have some ventilation holes here at the bottom. Moving to the top, you see a nice white acrylic sheet, and then you also have a clear fan grill with the Geek logo in it. Moving on to the back of the case, you do see this is an inverted motherboard layout. Starting at the top, we have our PCI Express slot, and you can see this nice clear piece here that is actually used to support that PCI Express bracket. You've got a cutout for your rear I/O. Also about this rear I/O, there isn't actually the actual I/O shield is actually being held on by the actual motherboard itself. The rear spot here for the fan, your 120 millimeter fan, and then we have a bottom mounted ATX power supply. As we go ahead and move along to the right side panel, as you can see, it's a nice clear piece of acrylic. It's held on with 5 screws, and then we also have some holes for ventilation. As we go ahead and move over here to the left side panel, as you can see, it also is a nice clear acrylic sheet, which is great if you want to look at the back of your motherboard. If you don't, they do have other options coming. They have smoked and a black side panel that will be optioned soon. And then you also see the rainbow colored front I/O connectors, which is a little disappointing. I wish they did have this sleeved in black. Also here on the left side, I just wanted to point out that you can see that the 2 storage drives do mount in the front of the case. We have an ASRock Z97E ITX motherboard, a Core i7-4790K. For our GPU, we have a VisionTech Radeon R9 Fury X. For memory, we have 8 GB of Corsair Vengeance low profile memory. For our hard drive, I have a Western Digital Caviar Blue 500 gigabytes. For SSDs, we have a Corsair Neutron XT 120 gigabyte SSD and an OCZ Vertex 460 120 gigabyte SSD. For our power supply, we have a Corsair AX650 with sleeved cables. And then for our CPU cooler, we have a Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo. Yes, the 212 Evo does fit. For mounting all this hardware together, first I had to mount the motherboard, then the power supply, then the Hyper 212 Evo, and then lastly, after all the cables have been put together, then I mounted the FuryX, and for the radiator I actually had to go get longer screws at Home Depot to be able to secure the FuryX radiator to this case. I also did talk to Geeek, and they are looking at supplying a fan grill. As we go ahead and move to the build on the inside of this case, I just wanted to talk about cable management really quick. There isn't too much room in this case, as the difficulties are with these mini ITX cases. The areas that I found to store cables are at the bottom. Alright, I just wanted to show you guys a closer look at the clearances between the Corsair power supply, the Hyper 212 Evo, and the FuryX. It is really tight in here, and the FuryX didn't have any problems, any cooling issues, but the 4790K didn't have any temperature issues running normal workloads or gaming, but definitely when you stressed the CPU during some of the CPU benchmarks and things like that, the temperature did start to rise. For fitting the Hyper 212, the clearance was so tight between the Hyper 212 and the power supply that I actually had to take one of the fan brackets off, and so the actual fan is being held with some tape on the actual PSU itself. And I think this is mainly a problem due to the fact that my motherboard has the CPU socket more towards the bottom of the motherboard, in this case, since the motherboard's inverted, or if it was mounted regularly, the motherboard's mounted regularly, it would be near the top of the motherboard. Let's go ahead and go over pros and cons next. For pros, I really like that they included a hardware container to be able to hold all of the screws and nuts and things like that. It was well packaged with foam sheets, and all the acrylic was protected, so I like how that was well packaged in a box. There are clear side panels to be able to see your hardware, which is pretty cool. If you were to have this as like a LAN rig or any type of rig that you just want to show off your hardware, the actual ability to be able to fit in a FuryX and a Hyper 212 and those type of things, mindful of the clearances, it's pretty awesome to be able to put all of this hardware in a small case, and then also having the awesome white and black color scheme is something that I really like. For cons, unfortunately they've got the rainbow front I/O cables, which really need to be sleeved. The unclear assembly instructions, although they have solved this with having directions online, and then I mentioned the no rear fan exhaust grill, but this is something that they are working on trying to include, and then also trying to include different options for the motherboard side panel, such as either being smoked or black. Alright guys, let's go ahead and wrap it up with my recommendation. Is this case for everybody? No, but it's definitely for the person that wants to show off their equipment in their case. They want to get more involved in the building process of their case, putting it together, like people that like to tinker with things like building Legos or Connects. Definitely for that type of person. I'd be careful handling this once things are built, because remember, once again, it is acrylic. But overall, I've enjoyed this case. Like I said, I would recommend it for those that like a little bit more advanced tinkering and things like that. It's a great price at $50. So let me know. If you like this video, go ahead and like it. Go ahead and leave a comment down below on if this doesn't interest you, what other type of ITX cases do interest you, and then lastly, go ahead and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.